TCI is brought to you by Spendthrift Farms' leading sire, Malibu Moon, the only horse to sire multiple Kentucky Derby and Preakness contenders in 2015.
Welcome back to TCI, your inside track to the Triple Crown. Alongside Joel Cunningham, I'm John Siegel. Well, Joel, our show says it's the inside track to the Triple Crown, and right now we still have a potential Triple Crown winner, and that's American Pharoah. You know, in the Derby, it's very tense. Everyone's nervous about the draw, where the horse is going to be. It's not so much like that in the Preakness, but how bad is it that American Pharoah drew the one hole?
I think anytime you draw the rail, it doesn't matter if it's a field of 3 or a field of 8 or a field of 18, like in the Derby, John. It's not a good place to be. We've talked about it. You can't go left. The good thing for American Pharoah in this case is that he is a very tactical horse and he's a good gate horse, as well as Dortmund. You want to be interested in whether or not you're a good gate horse, but you also need to control, to a degree, the horse on your immediate outside. Both American Pharoah and Dortmund have both been good gate horses in their career, and there's such a long run into that first turn. Both horses are so tactical, John, based on the strategy they're going to employ. I'd have to imagine you have to let them run out of the gate. You have to make an earnest run that first quarter mile to the first turn just to try to establish position, but I don't see the cavalry charge to the rail like in the Derby, obviously. So it is different to that degree. I don't think you'll quite see that. So the fact that he's such a good gate horse and he's so tactical, I think that benefits him greatly in here. So it starts at the gate with him.
Well, you know, we talked a lot about traffic trouble in the last show, horses that you know, kind of were compromised in the Derby. One of those horses was Mr. Z, you know, according to Wayne Lucas. There's been some interesting news with him this week leading into the Preakness, where, you know, the Zayat said he will not run in the Preakness. So it looks like they just transferred ownership, and now here the horse is showing up in the Preakness.
And I'm assuming the deal went through, but you're right. Wayne Lucas didn't want to take no for an answer. He was, you know, he's won this race 6 times, and I guess he feels like he has the winning formula, especially with a good colt like this that he feels like, you know, can be in the mix. He thinks his Derby was a throwout. He thinks he's doing as well as ever. So he's got a little bit of Preakness fever right now, ships his horse to Baltimore, thinks he has a shot to be in the mix here. And, you know, the fact that obviously Zayats have, you know, the horse going for the Triple Crown, American Pharoah, their A-string colt. It looks like we have an ownership change here with Calumet now buying. That's one of Mr. Lucas's clientele. Them buying into the horse here to give the horse an opportunity to run a la Oxbow, who won in those silks with Wayne Lucas a few years ago.
All right, well, let's take a look at the TCI top 5 this time because we only got 8 horses in the field. And let me see what you think about this Preakness field and run this down a little bit for me.
I think it's pretty obvious. Your top 3 Derby finishers, I see no reason not to have them 1, 2, 3, John. I mean, American Pharoah, and he was a horse that was very close to being number 1 for me, and I stuck with Carpe Diem. 2 horses that, you know, we've been on since they broke their maiden.
Yep.
Obviously, you're not going to see Carpe Diem materiality. Anything, you know, in terms of talent away from the top 3 coming back in here, that's a grade 1 legitimate horse that you would say, okay, maybe they can upset the apple cart. You have some new shooters in here. Divining Rod, I think, has the most upside of them. But, you know, obviously he's a horse that I think is developing, John, but he hasn't really been a top-level colt yet. Danzig Moon, another horse that, you know, had some trouble in the Derby, ran well in there, but still was no impact on the top 3 in here. So I think these 3 are clear-cut above the rest. And if there's a horse with upside, I think maybe it's Divining Rod.
All right, well, let's look at some keys to the race real quick and tell me about Firing Line. You know, he draws to the far outside, but that could be a benefit. I mean, it is a long stretch there. You know, you go in front of the stands for the first time, a lot of time to get a good position. What do you think the pace scenario is going to be like in the Preakness?
Well, unless the rail is golden, I think the 8-hole is where you want it to be. So Gary Stevens could not have hand-picked a better draw. I mean, with such a run, like you mentioned in the first turn, you don't want to have to deal with any traffic, and to have a horse as tactical as Firing Line, Gary can pick his spot, and he has about a quarter mile to run to be able to pick that spot, whether or not he finds himself on the lead, if there's no pace developing, or he finds himself stalking. I mean, you can imagine he's going to have his head cocked to the left, really sort of gauging what's going on at the rail. You know, does Mr. Z go the lead in here? Is he fast enough to even make the leads? My question, even if Lucas wants to go, they would really have to send him, in my opinion, because I think you're going to see the 2 horses to the inside, Bob Baffert's horses. They're so good out of the gate. Dortmund's so quick out of the gate, John. American Pharoah obviously is a very quick horse, a natural cruising speed type horse. I expect to see both of them run out of the gate because you kind of have to from those posts. So I expect a pretty honest pace in here. Unlike the Derby, when Stanford scratched out, Ocho didn't go the lead, decided to take back. You sort of looked up when they went past the first turn there, and the half mile at 47 and change, and you had those horses like this on the lead, you knew at that point it was going to be a pretty leisurely pace. I don't expect that here at Pimlico. I expect more of a 46 and change half mile, depending on how the track's playing, obviously. And I see more of an earnest, tactical race here with some horses that really have a good cruising speed.
All right, so the big question is, after Saturday, do we still have a Triple Crown, potential Triple Crown horse on the line, or do you think there'll be an upset?
Well, Mr. Zayat looked at me in the winner's circle and he says, not number 2 anymore, referring to the TCI top 10, and I agree with him. I'm a believer in American Pharoah, John. Regardless of the post, I think he has so many weapons that he can negotiate a good trip from there. I like the way Bob Baffert's campaigning him. I think he'll come back and run his race in the Preakness. You know, historically, the Derby winners have done well in the Preakness coming back in 2 weeks. Historically, the good Derby winners have run well in the Preakness. Some have even run better, their lifetime best race. So I expect American Pharoah to win the Preakness, and I actually like the top 3 finishers in that order. Firing Line, I'm not sure he wants to win. We've talked about that before.
Right.
Go look at the Low South Futurity. Go look at the Bob Lewis. Look at the Kentucky Derby. Tell me he doesn't lose his focus in the stretch when he's fighting a good horse. I think he's the horse to me that came in the Derby fresh, was carrying a lot of flesh. I think he comes out maybe more of a fit horse sitting on a big race here, but does he want to win? Does he want to beat a top-class horse like American Pharoah? He hasn't shown me he has yet, so I like American Pharoah over Firing Line in another good stretch battle. And Dortmund, a horse that you could argue is maybe plateaued a little bit. I like him third in here, but I will say this, if you're a Dortmund follower, you know, you could make a good argument that the rail was not the best place to be on Derby Day. So if you expect him to run better here, watch out for Dortmund to have maybe an off-the-pace trip in here, John. I think maybe now that they've gone to the lead in their last few and they didn't win on the lead, I think maybe Baffert's tactics now is maybe to take back with him. Come around, make one run with a target on your inside. Maybe try that with a competitive horse like Dortmund as opposed to sending him on the lead. So I don't expect Dortmund, if you're a Dortmund fan, I don't expect to see him on the lead here. I think they'll change tactics, try to get him back on his winning ways, maybe coming from off the pace and having a target.
All right, thank you, Joel.
Yep.
Thank you guys for watching. Make sure you come back next week. We'll see if JC's right, and we'll still have a potential Triple Crown horse on the line.